Very excited, not knowing what's going to happen.
Okay, welcome everyone. As we welcome in Stephen Holtzman and Elliot Udell and friend, and Dr. Block, Eddie Chazan, Michal, A.B. Spry, Mel Zachter, Chaim Lerner. It's wonderful to see you. We've really been missing you. Very good to see you. Nachman Chapler, Ruvain Pollack and grandson, Dr. Guy, and Menachem Umansky, Naftali, Moshe Lehman, Irving Fishbaum, Yitzi Muller, Abe Arbach, Rabbi Kranz, Avi Shapiro is joining us now, and we welcome over here Saba and Reb Yafi and Reb Kramer and Gedalia and Berish. You're Reb Shannon, right? Shannon, what's your first name? Ruvain Shannon, who is welcome to the community, welcome to the share. You were by my share in Borough Park, right? And Reb Shleimer, Rich Lenner, I don't know if I said him. So, Almost. Again, we have 9. The elusive center, that elusive 10th person. If maybe Rabbi Krause will come in, and then we'll have 10. Maybe who else is? Yeah, who else is missing over here? We're missing somebody else also. Herbs is in here, right? Okay. I'm hoping for it. If we have regular 9, so he'll stop working in Muncie, and that's all. Very simple. Anyway, we are sponsored by A.B. Spry for the safety of the soldiers. There's no time that's necessary like now, and the hostages, the retrieval should be easy and safe and go without a hitch. Especially for Issa Zeb ben Yuta by Shimon Kleinli, Nishmas Asher Anshel ben Yuda, and Gittel by Shimon Pinchas by Irving Fishbaum for his Gesund, Isser ben Rezel, for Avigdor Aye ben Rivka, and Yalad ben Chavo. The bris of Yitz Hashem will be on Monday, and Meir ben Chayesar. They should have a refuah shalema b'seich shar chayli Yisrael. We are holding on the sugya of zenene v'zeloi chaser. Now, although Marshall is not here, but he's here even if he's not here. So, if you remember, the case is that Marshall squatted in Stephen's apartment in Boca. Now, Stephen was not renting out the apartment. Anyway, because he's coming up in January, so he was not renting out the apartment. On the other hand, Marshall benefited because he would have otherwise gone to the Marriott and paid top dollar in Boca. So it's a case of zenene v'zeloi chaser. And the question is, should Marshall pay? So here the Gemara takes that up right away now on the top line of Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Sholach le Rabbi Abba bar Zavda l'Mori bar Mar. Rabbi Abba bar Zavda sent to Mori bar Mar. Boy minei Rav Huna, please ask from Rav Huna this question: Adar b'chatzach aveiroi. If Marshall is in Stephen's apartment shloi medatoi without his consent, tzarich la'alos leischar, does he have to pay him? Oiloi. Unfortunately, before he had a chance to ask Rav Huna passed away. In the meantime, Noch Nafshe de Rav Huna. However, Rav Huna's son, gave a report. Amalei Rabba bar Rav Huna, Hachi Amar Abba Mari. So did my father, my master, say Mishmei de Rav in the name of Rav. Marshall doesn't have to pay. Stephen didn't lose anything. He wasn't renting it out anyway, so he doesn't have to pay. And then he said what seems to be an unrelated case. V'azoicher bayis meruvain, if Menachem rents a house from Ruvain, malas schar l'Shimon, he has to pay Shimon. So the Gemara says, that doesn't make sense. If he rents it from Ruvain, why does he have to pay Shimon? Shimon ma'avidite, what does Shimon have to do with it? So the Gemara explains, Hachi Kamer. What it means is as follows. If he rented it from Ruvain, but it was found out to be that it was Shimon's, Nimtza Baya Shel Shimon Mal Lo Yischar. Now, why? In this case, he lived in Shimon's property without Shimon's knowledge, right? Why should he have to pay? So Tate, it's a steerer to what he just said before. So the Gemara answers, no. In the case of Shimon, was renting his apartment. Reuven absconded with it, but Shimon was renting the apartment. So for Shimon, it's a case of chasar. Shimon lost, because if he wouldn't have been in there, then he would have rented it out. The first case that says that Stephen doesn't have to pay is where, as we said, Marshall doesn't have to pay Stephen, is where Stephen wasn't renting it out anyway. So it's a case of zenena v'zaloi chaser, and a case of zenena v'zaloi chaser, you don't have to pay. Itmar Nami, as we welcome in Yitzi Padower and Reb Shutman just joining us as we are just starting 11 lines from the top of Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. 11 lines from the top of Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Itmar Nami. Amar Reb Chia bar Avin Amar Rav. Reb Chia bar Avin said the name of Rav. V'imri lo Amar Reb Chia bar Avin Amar Rav Huna. That Reb Chia bar Avin said the name Rav Huna. Hadar b'chatzer chaver shaloi midata. If Marshall lives on the property of Stephen in Boca without his knowledge, and Stephen wasn't renting it out, but Marshall gets benefit, ain't it tzarich la'alos lo yischar. He doesn't have to pay him. And then again, he says something which doesn't seem to make sense. V'asaycher bayis mibnei ha'ir. If somebody rents a house from the townspeople, ma l'schar l'baylim. He gives up, and there we have our minyan. We have our minyan, Baruch Hashem. It's good to have you. Kraus, ma l'schar l'baylim. He has to pay the owner. So the Gemara says, well, if he rented from the townspeople, what does it mean he has to pay the owner? Ba'alam maya v'detay. What does it have to do with the owner? If we find that it was privately owned, but the owner didn't know that the townspeople rented it, and we said that if you live without the person's consent, you don't have to pay. Tarte, it's a stira. Says, well, no, in the second case, the owner, it was something that he would have rented right away when he got it away from the townspeople. And therefore, that's a case of zenen of zechasa. That's why you have to pay. The first case is the case of Marshall living in Stephen's property where Stephen wasn't renting it out anyway. So that's zenen of zechasa. He doesn't have to pay. Now the Gemara adds another reason why Marshall doesn't have to pay. You see, if Stephen's property in Boca would be left uninhabited, there's a shade that hangs around uninhabited places. It's called She'iyah. It's the name of a shade. So Marshall is actually doing a favor for Stephen. Amrav Schayr, Amrav Huna, Amrav Rav, Hadar b'chatzer chaver shaloi midatai, where Marshall lives in Stephen's property without his knowledge, ain't tzarich la'alos lo yischar. You know why? Because, as we said, Stephen wasn't using it anyway, and Marshall is actually doing him a favor. Mishum shenema u'she'iyah yukas shar. She'iyah, which is the name of a demon, beats down the gate. It causes,
I don't mean to interrupt.
She'iyah yukas shar. And the demon beats down the gate. I saw this demon, and it gores like an ox. It causes devastation. Now, the Rishonim say the main reason he doesn't have to pay is because it's lo chasa. But this is an additional reason. Rav Yosef says the additional reason is a little different, because Beisa Meisva Yosef, a house that's inhabited, it becomes habitable, which means that if somebody is living in the house, they'll notice if there's a leak in the roof and repair it. They'll notice that there's termites, and they'll get rid of it. If a house is left uninhabited, problems won't be noticed, and the house could come to ruin. So Marshall is doing Stephen a favor. My beinayu. What's the difference between these two reasons? Ike beinayu de kamishhtamish bei betzive v'tivna, where Stephen was using it, but he was using it to store timber or straw. So She'iyah doesn't attack it because it's being used for storage, so it's not completely unused. She only attacks when it's completely unused. On the other hand, the other reason you don't have, because the straw and the timber is not going to notice the leak in the roof, it's not going to notice the termites. Yes?
I just wanted to point out that I think the word She'iyah is the same word as Shaya. That they use for politics.
I mean, She'iyah means desolation.
That's probably where they got.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no consideration part of the law that if people are renting their houses, actually that's their parnasa, and now the person goes and squats in somebody else's house. The people who are trying to make parnasa, they lost.
No. If anything, that's a grama. You don't pay for a grama. That's no consideration. Now, here we got, let's let some people in. People are knocking on the door and I'm not answering. We want to welcome in Avi Shapiro. It's very good to have you. And Reb Zuckerman, it's very good to have you too. Abe Arbach has just joined us, so keep on coming, Rabbi Isai. I know people have different schedules today, and this is like a holiday day for some people. Says the Gemara, Hahu Gavra, this is an interesting case. Hahu Gavra the Pana Padna Akilkalto Diasme. A person built a fancy house, a Padna is a mansion, on the ruins of an orphan. Agve Rav Nachman la Padna Mine. Rav Nachman confiscated the mansion until they paid the Yisayimim their due. So the Gemara wonders, this was land that wasn't used. The Yisayimim weren't using it at all. They were not planning to use it. So it's a case of Hadar b'chatzah chaveira shalei midatoi. It's a case of zen and of zeloi chaser. And yet, Rav Nachman collected the mansion from the man who built the mansion. You have to pay? Says Gemara, no, you don't understand. It wasn't going unused. There were some gypsies on the land. Karmenoy are people from Karmenoim. They were gypsies, and they gave the Yisayimim a pittance, but they gave the Yisayimim something. So it wasn't a completely loy chazan, because now that he built the mansion there, the Yisayimim lose the money that they were giving from the gypsies. And this is what he said. He said, give them the money that the gypsies were giving, and they didn't want to, so he confiscated the mansion until they gave the money that the gypsies gave. And let's see the Gemara inside. Amalei zilpai sinu liyasme. So Rav Nachman said, go and appease the assignment, give what they got from the gypsies. However, v'loi ashkach, and they didn't listen. So Agvei Rachman Padnamine, he confiscated the mansion, he chained the door until they would pay that money. Now, Baruch Hashem, Yehuda from Yerushalayim has joined us, Sean Fogel has joined us, and as I tell everybody, we're back to 28 Zoomers. A minute ago it was 23. It's good to have people coming in. As I tell you, never hesitate to come whenever you can. Whenever you can, join us. The rest you could get on Kolalashin, on YouTube, on TorahAnytime.com, and who knows where else, on Facebook. So come and join us. we are celebrating that Chaim Lerner is back. Chaim, you've been very missed. You're very missed. So now, by the way, I just want to tell you ahead of time that I'm a little bit rushed tonight because my shver and shviger are making Sheva Brachas tonight. So I am notably missing. But they know I give share. It started 7:30, so I got to catch at least they'll probably want me to speak also, so I got to catch the tail end. So I did the Mishnayos already. That's why I recorded the Mishnayos by Mincha, so that I could dash out. So now the Mishnah says, Keitzad mishalemes mashenenes. So the Mishnah goes on to say that if the animal is walking in the street and eats in the street, so Shane is potter in the Rosh Hashanah. So then, let's see, whose animal is it? Who has a guilty look on their face? Eddie. Eddie has a very guilty look. Eddie's animal is walking in the street and eats Dr. Udel's apples. So he's not chayiv to pay for the apples because it's shein in the Rosh Hashanah. For shein in the Rosh Hashanah, you're not chayiv to pay. But since Dr. Udel doesn't have to feed his, since Eddie doesn't have to feed his animal, so he has to, that benefit that he doesn't have to give the animal supper, he has to pay Dr. Udel. On the other hand, if Dr. Udel's animals is on the side of the Rosh Hashanah, then Eddie has to pay full damages. So, says Gemara, Keitzad Mishalemes Mashenenes, Amarav Ubemarzeres. When we say, and this is a chiddush, when we say if the fruit is on the side, the simta, the side of the Rosh Hashanah, Eddie has to pay full. It's talking about when the animal is still in the Rosh Hashanah, but it turns his head to the side street, to the simta, so he has to pay full damages, even though the body of the animal is still in the Rosh Hashanah. V'Shmuel amar afilu marzeres nami pater. Shmuel says even if he turns, he's also pater, since the animal is in the Rosh Hashanah. So Shmuel heichi mishkachas l'anda mechayiv. Where would Shmuel hold these kayiv? Shmuel will hold these kayiv only if Eddie's animal completely goes into the side street. Kagain de shafkasal l'rechava va'azl v'kama b'tzidei rechav. Now, I should tell you that there is different pshatim in Rashi of why Marzeres is chayiv. Marzeres means is the animal is walking in the Rosh Hashanah and turns its head to the side street and eats with a turned head.
And what he's eating is in the Rosh Hashanah still.
No. Why is he turning? He's turning because it's in the side street. So that's the machlokes. One man Yama says since his head is now in the side street, so that's like the Rosh Hashanah, because Dr. Udel has the right to keep his peiros there. So he's chayiv because now he's eating in the Rosh Hashanah, which is chayiv for shein, and he has to pay the full amount. On the other hand, the other man Yama holds that since the main bulk of his body is still in the Rosh Hashanah, he's still potter and he only pays mashenenes, only the fact that he's doesn't have to give supper. Now, there is another school of thought that Marzeres is chayiv for a different reason. Because it's meshuna, it's unusual. An animal that's walking doesn't turn to the side. Then if it's unusual, then it's keren. And keren pays even in the Rosh Hashanah. The nafkamina is if you learn this way, if it's keren, then it only is a chatzi nezek. Because a keren that's a tam only pays a chatzi nezek. Others teach this not as an independent teaching, not as an explanation of the Mishnah, but rather as an independent teaching. Marzeres, where the animal turns its head towards the simta, Rav Amar Chayeves, Rav says then he pays a full amount because he's eating from the simta, which is a Rishus HaNizik. V'Shmuel Amar P'tura, and Shmuel says he's pata from paying, he only pays Mashanenes. Ulishmuel Mishalemes Masha Ezika, when in the simta do you pay the full amount? Heichi Mishkachasla, Heichi Mishkachasla de Mechayva. Kigain the Shavka L'Rechava, where he leaves the street entirely, V'azla become the Tzida Rechava, and goes into the simta. Master Reb Nachman Yitzchak, so Reb Nachman Yitzchak asks an interesting question. Our Mishnah says that if Eddie's animal, Eddie is the troublemaker of the evening with his Elsie, if Eddie's Elsie, I don't know, Eddie, how you live in Eretz Yisrael and still have animals here. That's probably why they're doing so much trouble. But, if Eddie's animal eats food at the door of the store, then he pays only Mashanenes, because the door of the store is Rishus HaRabim, and then he pays only the fact that he doesn't have to give supper. Right? If Eddie's animal eats in Dr. Yudel's store itself, that's the Rishus HaNizik, and then he has to pay the full amount. But we have a problem over here. Even if it eats in front of the store, the front of the store is not the Rishus HaRabim. The front of the store, you have to turn to the front of the store. So the Gemara assumes, the Mishnah says if you eat from the front of the store, Mishalem is Mashanenes. You don't have to pay the full amount. What's the case? Pshita b'machzeres, where the animal's turning, and yet v'ka'amar Mashanenes, only what it benefits Mashanenes in Mashazikoloi, not the full amount. But we said that Rav holds that when the animal turns, he has to pay. Now, this is probably more understood according to the Pshat that it's Keren. So if the animal is turning, then it's Keren, then why should he only pay what he benefits? He should pay Chatzi Nezek of the full damages. Even according to the other Pshat, once it goes off the Rishus HaRabim proper and turns, it should be considered more the Rishus HaNizik, and he should pay full amount. So who Ma'isif Lo, who Mefarak Lo? He asked the question and he answers it, that the opening of the store was at a corner. So the animal turns because it's turning a corner. So that's definitely not Meshuna. And it's definitely in his path. And that's why the Kaima B'Keren Zavis, so it's natural for him to turn, so that's considered in the Rishus HaRabim proper, and that's why he pays Mashanemes. Iked Amrei, there's another version over here. Marzeres Kule Almaloi Pligi D'Chayeves. If the animal is in the Rishus HaRabim and turns to the side street, everybody holds his chayv to pay full damages to Dr. Yudel. Because the side street is used now by Dr. Yudel, it's like the Rishus HaNizik. And you pay full amount. Or everybody holds that it's unusual and you pay Chatzi Nezek of the full amount. Ki Pligi, this is a new case. New case. Anaya story. Ki Pligi. Now here we're going to go to Michal. What happens over here is Michal is building a house. He decides not to build on right by the property line. He doesn't want the house to be right on the street. So he brings his house in 8 feet from the property line. Now he's a nice guy, Michal, and he lets the public in those 8 amas that he put it in. He let people walk there. Ki pligi, b'mekatza mokam rishusay the Rishus HaRabim. He designated some of his private property and let people walk there. V'hachi et amarav lo yishanu ela marzeres. The only time you're chayiv full damages is if the animal turns to the side street. Aval Mikatza Mokam Rishusa the Rishus Harabim, when he gave those 8 feet to the Rishus Harabim, and the animal ate something in there, since he gave it over that let people go there, it has a din of Rishus Harabim, and Shane is potter in the Rishus Harabim, Patura. And by the way, Patura means that he's potter from paying damages. He's only chayiv to pay if his animal didn't have to get supper. Shmuel says no. Even if he let people go there, it's not a Rishus Harabim proper, and chayeves, and Eddie is chayiv completely. Now the Gemara does an interesting thing over here. The Gemara wants to say, and I haven't been welcoming people here. Sandy Grunfeld has joined us, and Dov Reidenberg has joined us. Welcome. And of course, David Helfgott on Kol HaLashon. So anyway, and it goes without saying that I welcome the hundreds of thousands of people that are watching us and all the other different online mechanisms. We really feel like you're with us as well, wherever you are. And there are people watching from very far away, and not just over here, Yehuda from Yerushalayim, but I know we have a regular listener in Berlin. We have people listening, and Mamish literally Arba Kanfei Sa'aretz in London. So anyway, says the Gemara now, there is a interesting machlokes, and that is in this case where Michael brings in his property, and he brings it in from the property line 8 feet, and he lets people come on the property, and he digs a bar. He has storage in that 8 feet, and somebody falls in there. Is he chayev or not? Now the same thing would be true if he left fruit there and somebody slips on it. Is he chayev? Now if he is chayev, so then that's why if somebody ate it, he would be potter. If Eddie, the well-known mazik, his animal ate it, he would be potter, because if you eat somebody's bar, you're not chayev. It's a nuisance. You're allowed to take a bar, because it's a nuisance. If Michal is potter, then we could see that Eddie's animal would be chayev for eating it. And let's see the Gemara's tliya over here. Says the Gemara, Lema b'bar b'rishusay kamiflagi. Let's say they're arguing when Michal digs a bar in those 8 feet that he allowed people to come. Rav Damar Potter, who says that Eddie is potter for paying for that fruit, Kasavar Barber Shusay Chayim, Michael, by leaving apple in those 8 feet where people are allowed to go, had created a nuisance. And then you're allowed to eat a nuisance. And therefore that's why Rav says potter. Ushmul Damar Chayim, Shmul that says Eddie is Chayim, Kasavar Barber Shusay Potter. A bar that's made in those 8 feet are potter. And therefore Eddie's animal, when he eats it, is chayiv to pay. So Amalach Rav says no. The tliya is not a good tliya. La'olam emalach be'alma bar b'rishusay potter. If Michal digs a bar there, he's potter. However, he can't make Eddie chayiv for paying for the fruit. Because since he said people could walk there, Eddie said, look, if you allow me to walk there, then you had no right to leave fruit there. My animal is going to eat it. And therefore he says, V'shani hachadam alav kol kaminach the mikra v'slu l'pei roisechel l'rishus harabim. If you allow people to walk there, so you're putting your fruit in the way of where people walk, you can't expect my animal to avoid it. And make my acts responsible. Shmuel, on the other hand, says maybe the other way around. Shmuel Amabalma, he says there's a difference between a pit and fruit. It could be that if Michal digs a pit in those 8 feet, he's going to be responsible for its damages. Why? Because an animal doesn't see a pit. But fruit that he left there, he wouldn't be chayiv. Because that's in sight, and the animal should have avoided. And since he wouldn't be chayiv, then if Eddie's Elsie eats it, then Eddie would be chayiv to pay. And that's what Shmuel says. If he digs a pit, well, then if he gave people permission to go there, then he's chayiv if Eddie's animal falls in. The animal is not going to see it. Elaperis fruit could he say that he's not going to see it? The animal should see it. And therefore, since that's not considered a bar, it's not a nuisance, then if the animal eats it, it's not fully Yerushas Harabim, because it's still Michal's property, then the animal will, then Eddie will be chayiv to pay. So the Gemara says, let's go back to where the animal turns its head into the side street. Leima marzeres tanoihi. Let's say where the animal turns its head is machlokes tanoih. The Tanya, achla miteicha rechava, if the animal eats in the street. Now Shane in the Rishas Ram is potter, only mishalemes mashinenes. The only thing that Eddie has to pay is the fact that he doesn't have to give his animal supper. Mitzidei rechava, if he eats from the side street, Mishalemis Mashazik, he has to pay the full amount. Divrei Rameir. Divrei Rameir, Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rameir, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Lazar, Ein Darka Lechol, it's not its derech to eat, Elalalai, rather to go. Now that seems to mean that therefore, if it turns to the side, it's not normal behavior, and he's chayiv to pay. So it seems to be that, so the Gemara says, Reb Yossi, if he's just saying that the reason why he's potter on the thoroughfare is because in the thoroughfare you don't eat, you just go, then Reb Yossi and Tanakama. Ela machzerach zikibina. It must be that the nafkamina is if the animal turns. Tanagama savar machzeres Nami Mishalemes Mashanenes. Since the animal's head, the animal's body is in the Rishus Harabim, so even if it turns into the side street, he still pays only what the benefit was, that he doesn't have to give supper. It's still considered Shein B'Rishus Harabim, since the bulk of the animal is in the Rishus Harabim. Rabbi Yossi Savar, no. Since Ein Darka Lechol Elalich, it's not the derech for the animal to turn, to eat, but rather to walk straight. So when he turns, that's Keren, and he has to pay what he damages, a chatzi nezik. Rabbi Yossi Savar Mishalemes Masha Ezika. Says Malay, no. The Kulei Alma Machzeres, that's another question. If it turns, it's a machlokes ikarav ikishmul. Either like Rav that says that Machzeres is pays only what he benefits, or Shmuel who says that, Rav who says that Machzeres pays the full amount, or Shmuel who says that Machzeres only pays Mashanenes. That's not the machlokes over here. What's the machlokes? Here's the whole question. And that is, maybe you're chayiv for shein even in the Rishus Harabim. So you'll say, what? How can you be chayiv for shein in the Rishus Harabim? The pasuk says, "Ubiyah b'stei acher," only if it consumes in another's field. Says, well, no, maybe ubiyah b'stei acher just means to exclude if the animal consumed it in the, what happened is Michal put his fruit on Eddie's property. Then if Eddie's animal ate it, he's not chayiv. What are you doing on my property? So bia b'stei acher only comes to exclude the rishus hamazik. Let's see it inside. Says the Gemara, When it says the animal consumes in another field, what's that excluding? So we learned, the whole Masechta we learned, it excludes that if it's in the Rishus Harabim, Edi is Potter. So Mar Savar Bia B'Steiacha V'loi B'Rishus Harabim. If it's in the Rishus Harabim, Edi is Potter. Or Mar Savar, no. Even in the Rishus Harabim, Ein Darka Lechel El Halach. Edi is Chayiv even if he eats it in the Rishus Harabim. Now, it says Ubia B'Steiacha. That's coming to exclude V'loi B'Rishus HaMazik. And not if Michal put his fruit on Edi's property. If he put his fruit on Edi's property, then Edi is not going to be chayiv. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. I don't need a pasuk for that. B'Rishus HaMazik? You don't need a pasuk to tell me that Edi is potter if you put it on Edi's property. Lema, Edi could say, Perach B'Rishusi, my boy. What's your fruit doing on my property? You're trespassing. I'm not going to be chayiv if you trespass. So the Gemara says, you're right. The difference over here is in the question of ilfa, and that was where Edi's animal was walking in the Rishus Harabim, and it eats from the back of Dr. Block's animal. Is that considered still in the Rishus Harabim, or is that the Rishus HaNizik? And the other case, where the animal, Edi's animal, was working and it jumped up. So we had a shaila if kaifetzes is unusual behavior, and then you're chayiv even in the Rishus Harabim, or not. So the argument between them is in the case of Ilfa and Rabbi Ishia. So the Tanna Kama says it's still in the Rishus Harabim and Edi is potter. While Rabbi Yossi says that it's not the animal to eat from the back, it's not the animal to jump up and eat, and therefore he's going to be chayiv even in Rishus Harabim, albeit chatzi nezek, because it's keren. Now, we need a really good person for this. Shalom Fogel. Shalom Fogel has a roof, and his dog or his goat is on the roof, and it jumps from the roof and eats berishes or breaks berishes china on the floor. So Akelev Agdi, Shalom's dog and goat, shekoftu mirosh hagag, that jumps off the roof, v'shibru es hakelim, and broke Berish's kalim, that's downstairs, it's Berish's courtyard. Mishalim nezik shalom. Why? Mipnei shein mu'adin. It's normal for an animal to jump. It's not a high roof. It's normal for an animal to jump. Now, the next case is a complicated case. We had it earlier. We're not going to go into details. The Gemara will go in as we, in the ensuing days. But Akelev Shenot al Charara, here Shalom Fogel's dog took Berish's cookie. V'halach, it's a nice Chinese cookie. Akelev Shenot al Charara, v'halach legadish, and the cookie was hot, steaming with coals, and he took it to Berish's crops, heaped up crops. Now Shalom's dog ate the cookie, the hidlik hagadish, and then he threw the cookie with the coals on the crops and burnt down the hidlik hagadish and burnt down the crops. So ala charara, well, it's in Berish's property and it's regular shane. Mishalom nezek shalom, he pays nezek shalom. Vala gadish, since throwing the cookie with the coals, that's tzroiris, that's the animal's force. So that's a chatzi nezek, mishalom chatzi nezek. That's, we're going to see, that's one of the pshatim that the Gemara advances in the Mishnah. But now let's get to Shalom's, we don't want to miss out on the drama of Shalom, and let's talk about it outside before we learn it inside. Let's get the drama over here. Shalom's dog is on the roof, it jumps off the roof and breaks Beresh's kelim. Right? So we said that's normal. So he pays. What happens if the dog falls? What's the din then? So you'll say falls, it says Adam Muad Lailam. But dog is not Muad Lailam, and Shalom is screaming on the top of his lungs, Oines! Oines! This is, by the way, this is T-bone China. It's a $1,900 set. So here's an interesting thing. Is this tchilasai b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis? Because when Shalom left the dog, it could have jumped. So that's a pshia. At the end, it fell, so it's seifa b'ainis. So if you hold tchilasai b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis, you should be chai. I remember I had a Rebbe, Rabbi Green, he was a big London. He used to say that if a boy ate a lot of cholent and missed Seder Shabbos afternoon, it's a case of tchilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis. He shouldn't have ate that much cholent, so it was a pshia. And afterwards, he couldn't get up. He was the soporific effects of the cholent. That's tchilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis. So anyway, so let's see the Gemara inside. Time of the kaftu, it's only if Shalom's animal jumped. Hanaflu potter, because Shalom says it's an inus. Alma kasavar tchilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis potter. That means that although he was negligent by leaving it there initially because it could have jumped, but if it fell, so he's potter.
What's the pshia?
The pshia is that he shouldn't have had it on the ledge because it could have jumped, and it's muad to jump.
And if it jumps?
Then he's going to break the kelim.
Where the kelim? The kelim are on the roof?
No, on the ground, in Beresh's part. So then it would break the case of the Mishnah.
So
Says,
the person put it there? The owner put the kelev there? It didn't go there by itself?
Well, even if it went there by itself, he had to make sure it doesn't go there.
Kelev has pshia?
What?
Kelev has pshia?
No, the owner has pshia.
So I'm saying, so if the dog walked around, just ran around somewhere, that's a pshia on the owner?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, what do you think? If a dog comes on your property and eats things, the owner says, that wasn't a pshia. Of course it's a pshia. What's your problem? I don't understand what your problem is.
What's the pshia at the beginning?
We learned in the Mishnah that if the goat jumps and breaks it, he's chayiv. Why? Because he was a pshia. He should have watched his thing. His dog.
Right.
So now it was at the ledge and it fell. So it was initially a pshia because it could have jumped. At the end it fell, so it's an inus. So that's tchilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'inus. So now, Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned likewise, HaKelev Agdik Shekofzu M'Rosh Hagag, a dog, a goat that jumps from the top of the roof is shibru es HaKelev and breaks Beresh's china, Mishal Nezik Shalom. Naflu Patur. So the Gemara says, Hani Chalamani Yom Tchilas B'Shiv V'Seifa B'Inus Pater. Elamani Yom Chayiv, that if he's initially a Pshia is Chayiv, then Mai Kalameima. So here the Gemara says an interesting pshat. Beresh kept his china right next to the wall. So if the animal jumped, it jumps at a distance. So it would have missed the china. So he wasn't a pshia. Because if he jumped, it wouldn't have hit the china. So now when he falls, so that's a complete inus. Kigain, the mikveh v'keil will gabi kaisel, the chi kafte b'ktzvitza, if the animal would have jumped, loy nafle alay. Vafilu b'tchilas b'pshia lek, and then you don't even have an initial pshia. Now, Amr Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava, Ka'amim shafilu naflu nami chayiv. There are times that even if the animal falls, Shalom is still chayiv. How? Mishkachas b'kaisel ru'ua, where it's a rickety wall. So the Gemara says, "My niu, What's the reason? Because he should be worried that the wall might collapse, and then the animal will fall on the china. That the bricks would give in, and the animal would fall. But says Gemara, but that didn't happen. The animal fell without the wall caving in. So again, that's only Tchilas B'Pshir V'Seifa B'Ainis. Seifa Lo Nafal Arche, the wall didn't cave in. V'Nafal Inu, the animal fell off. That's again Tchilas B'Pshir V'Seifa B'Ainis. Tchilas B'Pshir V'Seifa B'Ainis. Says Gemara, no, the case is Lo Tzricha B'Kaisel Tsar, where the ledge is very narrow. So where the ledge is very narrow, and Shalom knows that the animal climbs to the ledge, that's a complete pshia. Because the animal is going to fall because the ledge is narrow. Or, Rashi says in another pshat, tsar meaning the wall is slanty. Where the wall is slanty, or the wall is narrow, so there it's a pshia even for falling. Because the animal is going to climb on the ledge, and then it's inevitably going to fall because it's very narrow. And therefore, Shalom is chayiv, because that's not Tchilas B'Pshir V'Seifa B'Ainis, that's Kula Pshir. In such a case, it's a complete Pshir. Now, Rabbi say, I don't want anybody to forget this, and Shelley is here, Shelley is not here. So Irving is here. Irving, are you here? Yes. So please put on the chat that Motzi Shabbos, this Motzi Shabbos, Shir, only this Matzah Shabbos, Shir is 8:30. And the reason why it's 8:30 is because I am going away to Borough Park for Shabbos Sheva Brachas, so I want to make sure that I have time. Yes, don't leave. We're making Kaddish. Don't leave. We shoot if you try to leave. So anyway, Shir is at 8:30 Matzah Shabbos.